My name is Nick Vavis. I'm setting out on a journey through the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens. My goal? To visit 8 parishes in one day and show you why we live in a city of churches. In case you missed it, here's what happened last time on City of Churches. I began my day-long journey through the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens by visiting St. James Cathedral, the Bishop's Church in downtown Brooklyn. There, I met with Monsignor Strinkowski, who took me around and introduced me to the history of the diocese's oldest church. I then began making my way to my second stop of the day, St. Boniface. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again. Now the last time you saw me, I had just finished visiting the seat of the diocese, St. James Cathedral, and was off to St. Boniface, which is just a few blocks away. It's really not that far, so I decided to walk. Come on. I'm actually walking past the New York City College of Technology, which is part of the CUNY system, the City University of New York. The largest urban university in the United States, CUNY consists of 11 senior colleges, 6 community colleges, a doctorate-granting graduate school, a journalism school, a law school, and the Sophie Davis School of Biomedical Education. CUNY began its existence way back in 1847 as the Free Academy. It was founded by Townsend Harris, and it was meant for the purpose of extending the benefits of education gratuitously to persons who have been pupils in the common schools of the city and county of New York. This Free Academy later became the City College of New York and eventually grew into the university system that it is today. We're walking through the Metro Tech Center. It's a really great outdoor public space. In the winter, they have Christmas trees lit up and there's bands playing in the summer. It's a beautiful and great place to take a break. But no breaks for us. We're off to St. Boniface. Father Joel, one of the first things I noticed when I walked into St. Boniface was this statue to my right. Can you show this to me and tell me a little bit about that?
Sure, Nick, would love to. This is actually a statue of someone very close to my heart and very close to the heart of the community that worships here at St. Boniface. It's of St. Philip Neri, who was the founder of the Oratory, a religious community we call the Oratory. And St. Boniface is actually supervised by one of the houses of the Oratory right now and has been since 1989. Philip is known as the Saint of Joy. He was known to have a particularly good sense of humor. He was also known to be a very warm person, both spiritually and physically. And as a matter of fact, you may notice that the habit that I wear is very similar to the habit that he's wearing in the statue. He's got his, the upper bit of this cassock sort of unbuttoned because he was known, very quite literally, to kind of overheat. And so he used to wear his habit sort of opened a little bit at the neck so that he could cool off a little bit.
Okay.
It was also known to have a particularly warm heart. A very warm-hearted kind of saint. He's holding a book which has one of his sayings on it, "When shall we begin to do good?" He used to tell all of the people that he knew in Rome in the 1500s, whenever they would go out and do good works in the hospitals and on the highways and byways, when they would come back and report to him all the stuff that they had done that day, he said, well, okay, that's good, but when shall we begin to do good? As a way of goading them on, sort of continue to do good things.
Continuous acts of goodness.
Yes, yeah.
And then, of course, the other major thing I noticed when we walked in was the etched glass between the narthex and the church itself. Can you tell me about this?
Absolutely. We realized, because we have a very pretty building here, but it's also a very small building, that there were times and places when we needed a kind of wider access for people to come in when they worship. And then there were other times when we don't need as much space in the nave of the church, in the main body of the church. We began to sort of think through how we wanted to use the building and how we could use the building. The idea of having this glass screen came up. You'll see that it's etched in such a way as to copy a lot of the arches of the stained glass windows and various other sort of images. There's sort of rondelles there at the top, and and various other things. And it's very useful for us because it blocks off the nave from this narthex area, which we can use as a gathering space, so that we can kind of separate it when we want to.
I also noticed that in place of benches or pews, you have individual chairs.
Yes,
Is that something that the original idea was to do just that, or did that come about because of some other reason?
We ended up by having to replace the seating that was in the church originally because the kneelers of the original pews were all broken, and we needed to kind of...
Uncomfortable?
From what I understand, very uncomfortable.
Okay.
So chairs came up as a good idea because, again, it's a small church, and this means that we can rearrange things occasionally as necessary.
Sure.
Gives us a bit more flexibility.
Excellent.
In using the building.
I'm looking at these glass, I guess you'd call them tiles. The rest of the floor is tiled. This one happens to be made of glass. Tell me about this. Why is that unique?
Well, it's traditional in Catholic church buildings very often to have Stations of the Cross, 14 set spots which follow the way of Christ to the crucifixion. And very usually they'll be on the wall of a church so that the faithful can kind of stand and observe them and pray with them, or that during liturgical celebrations you can walk from one station to the next. In our church building, we realized that really the beautiful aspect of it is the stained glass windows that line the nave. And so when we started the renovation process, we wanted to make sure that we didn't detract too much from the stained glass. And the idea came up taking the model of some places in the Holy Land where there are, in fact, stations in the ground. What's artistically very interesting and beautiful about them, though, to my mind, is that if you trace the way of the cross through these stations, most often you are observing the scene through the eyes of Christ himself. There's actually 3 layers of etched glass. One layer has a scripture passage that was appropriate to whatever that moment is.
Right.
Another layer is kind of the foreground of the scene, the very sort of present one. And then another layer is kind of the background. You may see there's a kind of a ghost image there.
So do you have to look at it from a certain perspective? Do I have to stand in a certain place to...
Not particularly. I think you might find yourself oriented properly if you're at the head of it.
Sure. Tell me about this statue of the Virgin Mary.
Also created by the same community of sisters who created the St. Philip statue. It's a kind of modern representation of a very traditional Gothic image of a Blessed Mother holding the Christ child kind of very presently in her arms like that.
It almost looks like it's made of wood.
It is wood.
Is it carved wood?
It is carved wood and then polychrome, so there's a sort of slight color treatment given to it, and made out of one single sort of log of wood, actually.
Is there anything unique about this particular, the way she's posed or standing, that's unique to this statue? Or you said this is sort of a modern
It's a sort of modern rendition of a very traditional medieval kind of pose. What does sort of bring the modern era into us, though, especially here in St. Boniface, is we have an artist in the parish by the name of Alphonse Borasevich, who does a lot of canvases and sort of uses a lot of religious imagery in his contemporary art. And this canvas, which is behind the statue of the Blessed Mother, is meant to reflect, it's done by him, and it's meant to reflect kind of her. So it's sort of interesting to see medieval art, but also with a modern kind of background to it.
And the handcrafting is really exquisite. Yeah. I'm looking at some lyrics behind here on a mural. What can you tell me about that?
Well, when we got the statue a number of years ago, we, as a way of celebrating the dedication of the statue and sort of welcoming the statue to the church, 2 of the members of the Oratorian house here that wrote a hymn to Our Lady of the Oratory, as we call the statue. One member wrote the lyrics, the text, and the other wrote the tune. And that hymn was actually sung at the celebration where Bishop Daley, who was Bishop of Brooklyn at that point, came to dedicate the statue. And so,
how long ago was that?
Gosh, that was maybe 14 years ago.
14 years ago?
14 years ago, 13
And you
or 14.
played a part in that?
I did. I was actually working as the organist in the parish.
Oh, you were?
Way back then, when I was young. And so our artist here in the parish, Alphonse, wanted to incorporate some of that creative effort on the part of the Oratorian fathers and brothers in his own work. So that's actually what you see here. Now, if you're trained in reading music, however, you might be a little shocked by the musical notation, because the pitches are
Which I am. I'm trying to follow exactly how the melody would go. You would know better than I.
Pitches are all correct in terms of their placement on the staff, but the artist, he kind of reversed whether the note should be filled in or not filled in, he reversed it.
Okay.
So if you're actually trying to sort of put it together with a meter, it really won't work out.
Work.
Yeah, it won't work out.
So this is basically a snapshot of that.
Yes.
Albeit reversed,
yes.
as you had said. Okay. I tell you what, Father Joel, there's so much more I'm dying to see inside the church. I'd love it if you could give me a tour, maybe tell me some more things about the history, about the architecture and the parish.
Would love to.
Great,
Would
I'll
love
follow
to.
you.
Great.
Okay.
Good. So St. Boniface was founded in 1854 as a parish. It was the first founded parish in the newly founded Diocese of Brooklyn.
Okay.
So it has a significance just because of its longevity. We've been around, the parish has been around for 154 years.
Over 150
Yeah.
years, wow.
And at that point, the parish was really established as a kind of national parish for German Catholics. There was not any other place where German Catholics were able to gather, where they could be preached to in German, where the kind of cultural background and historical background of parishioners like that could be put together. And in fact, the choice of Boniface as a patron of the parish was very significant, because Boniface is often referred to as the patron saint of Germany. He was a very interesting man in his own right. He died in 754. He was a Saxon, of the Saxon tribe, but born in England, and became a monk, eventually became a bishop, and then was sent back to Saxony to reconvert some of the tribes that had been Christians but then had reverted to paganism, and he went there and was martyred, in fact, in the midst of his career and his apostolate as a bishop. The building itself was from 1872.
Wow.
Designed by Patrick Keeley, who was a very famous church architect,
architects.
neo-Gothic,
Sure,
cathedrals in
sure.
Buffalo and I believe Hartford, Connecticut, and Boston, and various other places.
So it was neo-Gothic. Would that be the style this was created in?
Yes.
Would you call this neo-Gothic?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So you have all this sort of Gothic arches as sort of artistic
Yeah,
motifs
the
and
arches.
various other things. And for Keeley, from what we know, theologically and spiritually to him, it was always important that the kind of height of a building, it draws the eye up, so it's sort of drawing the eye to
Right.
God. But then the focus of the sanctuary was always some representation of the crucifixion, because the Passion of Christ being so important for Catholic spirituality and Catholic sacramental understanding. So again, in our renovation of the building, we wanted to make sure that the crucifixion, the Passion of Christ, was something preeminent, and so we have that very beautiful and very large crucifix back there on the wall behind the altar. Again, the sisters from France who did for us the statue of the Blessed Mother and St. Philip, also the crucifix, and then the representation of Mary and of St. John, which are down here as well with the crucifix. That's a pretty traditional grouping to have in Gothic buildings or medieval buildings, where you'd have a crucifix and then the people who stayed with Christ to the very bitter end, his mother and his beloved disciple. Very often they're sort of grouped together in a little trio. And but again, it's that sort of polychromed wood.
It's very dramatic.
Yeah.
Looking. It's got an intensity to it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this extraordinary organ.
Yes, yes.
That you can't help not notice.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's actually, I won't call it a hand-me-down, but it was sort of, when the oratory was given care of this parish in 1989, the building was not in the greatest of condition, because the parish was struggling away very valiantly. But there weren't many people living in the neighborhood, and like many parishes in city centers, it can be difficult to keep up property.
Sure.
So one of the things that was missing from the building was there really was not any kind of organ appropriate for worship. So over the course of about, I believe, 7 or 8 years, we were able to buy off that organ on a kind of layaway plan through a friend of ours. It was actually an instrument installed in a Presbyterian church in New Jersey. It dates from 1964. And over the course of 7 years, whenever we got money together, we'd send the organ builder a little bit of money, and he'd bring in a new rank of pipes. And now it's all complete and there. And acoustically, this building is very wonderful.
I was going to ask you about that. The acoustics must be incredible with the high ceilings.
Both for organ music and choral music. We also, the Oratorian parishes tend to, around the world, have a reputation for putting a lot of concern into the liturgy and worship. So preaching, for example, is very important in Oratorian parishes. Music is very important in Oratorian parishes, and we're very lucky here in Brooklyn to have such a wonderful music apostolate. And you know, having an instrument like that organ helps us, you know, to do that well.
I would love a close-up look. If you could take me up there.
Would love to show you.
Really? That'd be great.
Would love to.
I'll follow you. That'd be terrific. Wow. This is the inner workings of the organ. Oh, amazing. This is pretty much the best view.
Absolutely
would you say,
is.
from up here?
Absolutely is. You get the chance to see everything here. On a Sunday morning, at our 11:15 Mass, which is our solemn Mass, we would have our organist and our choir master and our choir of about 25 to 30 singers who spend a lot of time working up here and providing us with the opportunity to pray better through music.
Oh, I bet it sounds amazing.
It does, yeah, it does. And it's again, acoustically, it's a wonderful building because it's alive enough that the sound is warm and interesting, but it's not so alive that you lose a sense of text or
So it doesn't overwhelm you and deafen you. And
not at all.
I know you have some history in music and you studied music, as you told me.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Happy. Well, I'll be humble enough. I'll try to be humble enough to do it.
Great,
yeah.
great. And you told me you're out of practice.
Well, you know, God's grace works sometimes, you know?
Yes, it does. I don't know how you play this instrument. I'm watching you play it, and it's so complicated. There's buttons, there's pedals, it's so unlike the piano I grew up with playing.
I played a lot of video games growing up, so, you know, hand-eye coordination.
There you go. I wasn't aware of all your talents. Well, Father, thank you so much. I appreciate it, the history you gave me and the music you shared with me. Really, it was definitely interesting, educational, and at a great time.
Great, Nick. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Good to
you.
meet you.
Absolutely.
Good luck to you,
too.
okay?
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
What a beautiful church with such a rich history. I'm so glad Father Joel was able to share it with us. Okay, my next stop is Our Lady of Mount Carmel. A 167-year-old Gothic gem, also known as the Mother Church of Queens County. Next time on City of Churches.